I want to recognize the presence of my Rosh Yeshiva who is here, Rabbi Wasserman. It's nice to see you. Sorry, here. I'd like to begin with a couple of lines of the beautiful. I want to recognize the presence of my Rosh Yeshiva who is here, Rabbi Wasserman. It's nice to see you. Sorry, here. I'd like to begin with a couple of lines of the beautiful. I want to recognize the presence of my Rosh Yeshiva who is here. It's nice to see you. Sorry, here. I'd like to begin with. I didn't know they could do that. A couple of lines of the beautiful. I'm on an endless loop. Presence of my Rosh Yeshiva who is here. It's nice to see you. Sorry, here. I'd like to begin with. I didn't know they could do that. A couple of lines of the beautiful. I'm on an endless loop. Presence of my Rosh Yeshiva who is here. It's nice to see you. Modern technology. Sometimes it works really. I'd like to begin with. I didn't know they could do that. A couple of lines of the beautiful. I'm on an endless presence of my Rosh Yeshiva who is here. It's nice to see you. Modern technology. Sometimes it works really. I'd like to begin with. I didn't know they could do that. A couple of lines. I hope Mom was into technology. Okay, good. So do I now. I'm going to start with Eshet Chayil, the beautiful proverb, the last of the Proverbs. It talks about how important the women in our lives are, not just our moms or our wives, but all the women in the world. And then Psalm 23, the beautiful psalm. Eshet Chayil ברחוק מפנינים מכרם בטח בלב בעלה ושלום לא מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בינות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי שובב ינחני במגלי צדק אוי למען שמו כמה כי אלך בגץ על מוות לא ירא כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורי תשענת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Maketh me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, restores my soul, guides me in the paths of righteousness. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our God and God of our ancestors, our rock and our redeemer, 1,000 years in your sight are as a passing day, an hour of night. Our generations come and go while you endure forever. We are always in your hand, O Lord, in death as in life, trusting in your love and in your judgments. O Lord in heaven, strengthen those who mourn the loss of Dore Leiser. Help them to look beyond this moment, to realize that death can never destroy the bonds of everlasting love. Sustain them with the knowledge of our faith that you will not abandon our souls to the grave, that you will not allow your faithful to suffer oblivion, for you, O Lord, have taught us the way of life. Through you, we gain eternity, and let us all say, Amen. One might be forgiven for believing that Dore Leiser would live forever. Passed away after battling some illness at age 93. And ask anyone who knew her and anyone who knew her well, they might all say the same thing. For her entire life, Dore was always there. Didn't make a difference where there might have been. She was there. And the idea of being always there is a very important Jewish concept. It's called keva or kavua. And it means being set and being permanent. It implies a certain steadiness, reliability, and continuity. There are many ways that Dore exemplified keva or kavua. And we're going to hear from members of her family who, better than me even, will be able to demonstrate and share some of this quality with her, with everyone. From what I've heard, she was essentially a quiet person, stayed home very often, not always a woman of many words. But when she did speak, she meant what she said, and she said what she meant. You know, in the Jewish tradition, a tree is a very potent symbol for a human being. The trunk of the tree, solid and strong, upright and firm, Its branches grow right from the trunk itself, and they in turn have branches of their own. The tree may sway in the wind and bend this way or that, but the best trees never break. They remain strong and true. I think we could say that this was Dore Leiser. Like the trunk of the tree, she was always firm and strong. It wasn't always easy to hear what it is she may have to say. It wasn't always easy to deal with the strength that she doled out. But she had very high standards for others and high standards for herself. She met the high standards that she had for herself. She fashioned, almost like an artist, a beautiful life, a life that was surrounded by beauty, a life that was dedicated to beauty. She had very humble beginnings back in 1929 in Oakland. But over the years, especially after she came to Denver working for IBM, and after getting married in 1954 to her husband, Chester Allen, had a life that allowed her to dabble in beauty and all things aesthetic. She surrounded herself with art. She had a designer home. She was a gardener, provided music lessons for her children. They were opera lovers, especially in Taos and Santa Fe. She was a Yiddish speaker, but you might not know that because she didn't share that with many people after a rather unfortunate encounter with a teacher who did not appreciate the fact that she had spoken Yiddish, and maybe an early episode of perhaps anti-Semitism. We didn't get that far in the conversation. She was a perfectionist who paid attention to the details in almost everything to which she set her mind to. And if you didn't pay attention to details, you may have had a difficult time with her. She was generous. She was proud. She lit Shabbat candles every week. Rabbi Wasserman is here. And I asked Riva and the good rabbi what the relationship was. And Riva shared with me that he would often call her before Shabbat to wish her a good Shabbat, because among the organizations that she was involved in, which included Hadassah and the League of Women Voters, she was one of the founders of the Women's Bank. And I spoke to one of the other founders of that bank yesterday, Wendy Davis, who recalls your mother very, very well. Shabbat candles, sent her kids to Shabbat services, had a strong Jewish identity, was surrounded by Jewish books, children's Jewish books, always Jewish authors on the shelf. Being Jewish was something important to her. It expressed itself in the pride that she felt in that. It may not have expressed itself in typical Jewish or steady Jewish observances, but there was no doubt that her home was thoroughly Jewish, not only because of Pesach Seders, but also because of the beautiful sukkah that they would have at their beautiful home in Cherry Hills Village. Things that made her smile included art and gardening and her generations of award-winning and show-winning dogs. She's polite and charming, at least could be, wasn't always social, but with those closest to her, she managed to share her very special light. And that's a very important thing. Her children and grandchildren and others who might be considered grandchildren are going to be speaking in just a few moments. All of them learned very important lessons. And whatever lessons Dore tried to teach, each of those people took those lessons and internalized them in their own special and unique way. So first, I'm going to call upon, representing her two children, and call upon Dr. Jeffrey David Leiser to say a few words.
We want to thank all of you who are here. We're somewhat of a small group, but that was perhaps one of the most difficult things for my mother as she became older, and that was that so many of her friends and contemporaries are no longer with us, but it's a joy to see all of you. It's hard for me to talk. Also, the rabbi said a lot of what I was going to say. So, but I guess the sorts of things that I saw probably most prominent was my mother's generosity. She and my father were both very savvy investors, and they were able to then give a lot of charitable support to a wide variety of causes. But she was also very generous personally. I remember when I was young, there was a school called the Emily Griffith Opportunity School, where young women would come and learn basically practical trades. There was an arrangement that some families would put them up with room and board in return for part-time nannying. And we had several of those women living with us over the years. Many of them came from pretty difficult backgrounds. And my mom, in essence, became a surrogate mother for several of them and corresponded with them for years afterwards. So she was very generous in that way. She was also generous to family. And she cared deeply about her family. I guess the other thing, that she was certainly a perfectionist. When she was helping me learn how to write essays or reports, I used to have to write on every third line to leave room for all the different corrections I was going to have to be writing in. But it did make me a better writer. Slow, but good. I think though I think you can't, but as we discussed, or as the rabbi mentioned, she really liked being at home. And there you could see three, just by walking into the house, you could, by looking around, see three of her greatest interests. So one interest which she and my father both shared was a love of art from a very early time in their marriage, as they were, I don't know whether they were driving to Mexico or driving from Mexico during their honeymoon. They came across a gentleman who was just selling carvings at the roadside. And there was actually one was a little cart filled with carved animals, but they couldn't afford it, so they bought something else. He's since then been recognized as a great primitive artist, and the thing they bought is probably the most valuable piece of art in our household. But they had remarkably good taste and pretty broad taste. with sculpture, like music, theater, opera. It was a good childhood to see all that, have all that around you. I never inherited any. I don't think I inherited any of it, but luckily my sister did. The next thing you noticed is that the house was filled with plants, and there was this gigantic yard. Our house is actually built on 2 lots. My friends nicknamed the yard the jungle. But she loved to garden. That was perhaps her favorite pastime to do. Unfortunately, I didn't inherit any of that either. But the house is still filled with green. And lastly, were the dachshunds. So there have been 8 generations of dachshunds through her and my father's marriage. They didn't actually start showing them until when they were buying it had been the 3rd generation, a pair of puppies. The breeder insisted that they agree to allowing them to be showed before she would sell them the puppies. And they fell in love with that. And that one of those puppies was the first champion. And then they had a litter and so on and so on. Typically 2 to 4 dogs in the household, always. One time up to 6, which did damage my sister's dating life a bit. She had one potential date come over and 6 dogs chased him down the hallway barking, and he never came back. So, but those were truly, she loved the dogs. And even though they were show dogs, they were really her dogs, house dogs, pets, first of all. I don't know if I think that other people are going to tell you more about her, so I think I'm going to leave it there. It's hard, especially standing here by her casket. I'm sure, almost all of us here have experienced that someone who was always there for you. And what happens when you lose them, and you wake up in the morning and you have to realize that they're no longer there. And that's one of the most difficult and strange feelings, I think, that we experience as humans. I still love her. I told her I loved her when she was many times, and I trust that she will still understand that I love her and miss her. Thank you very much.
So for those who don't know me, I am Cyril. I am Jeff's middle daughter and the oldest granddaughter of Grandma Dore. And please forgive me. I've never given a eulogy before, and I expect I'm going to cry a lot. So today's a really hard day to see, and this is a hard speech to make. But I'm going to try to get through both of them with the grace and aplomb my grandmother would have hoped to see. I think the identity of a grandparent is something somewhat unique from the rest of a person's life in a way. To others, she may have been Devora, Leiser, or Dore, but for the entirety of my living memory, she has been Grandma Dore. Not a title, just the name, Grandma Dore. And the Grandma Dore I knew was a remarkable person. She was outwardly somewhat restrained, you would think, maybe even withdrawn. She didn't joke with us or howl with laughter like her husband, Grandpa Chet, but she had depths of love and kindness that still shone through in numerous little moments. She did make sure to tell us she loved us all the time, of course, multiple times at the end of every phone call, and big hugs at the beginning and end of every visit. Yet her love was the most evident, I think, in the ways it was more subtly expressed. She did a lot with food, typical for any Jewish grandmother, I think. And I know everyone says this about their grandma, but she could really, really cook. And I think it was one of her favorite ways of showing her love. Every year when we were young, we'd arrive from the airport to a freshly made brisket sitting foil wrapped on the counter and a loaf of challah bread to serve the slices over, even if we were getting in at 11:30 or midnight. And that brisket was so good that when my sister and I became vegetarians, we had to come to an agreement that vacation from Indiana also maybe kind of meant vacation from vegetarianism. And yes, we endured plenty of ridicule from Dad and Abraham for that. We even packed a casserole dish of this brisket to take skiing with us at Winter Park one year. And when tragedy struck and the whole thing fell and shattered on the floor, it was the grandkids' opinion that salvaging a few bites was quite worth the risk of broken glass. Luckily for our health and unluckily for our taste buds, Dad, the doctor, managed to clean it up safely before we had our way with it. It was also utterly irreproducible, even with her exact recipe. Dad tried one time. Wasn't the same. Never tried again. I suppose now I'll have to try myself. And maybe if I'm lucky, I'll be able to get something close to it. And if it can have half as much flavor, or convey half as much love to the people I share mine with as hers did, then I'll know I did well. There were times we haven't done so well, though. And I think those moments honestly shine even more brightly. One year, Abraham and Marguerite decided to plan, prepare, and present an entire meal, complete with a main dish and 2 sides. One of the sides was sauteed spinach. I couldn't tell you what the other 2 parts of the meal was because they forgot to rinse the spinach. They were teens, still learning, some bites were like eating mud, gritty mud. It was undeniably a disaster of a dish, and Grandma, the perfectionist, is with the high standards, as we've all heard, with her impeccable taste and her years of dining and cooking, didn't say a thing as she finished her serving. And the next morning when we woke up and we came in for breakfast and, opened the fridge, she just looked up and said with the most carefully mild expression that she'd given the leftover spinach to the dogs for breakfast. And I quote, "I thought that was best." Nothing more was ever said about it. And the next year, she even let Abraham and Marguerite join Aunt Sharon in planning Thanksgiving, though my siblings had done a lot of work to lose food-related trust and nothing to earn it since. I also remember very fondly the time Grandma came up to the cabin when we all knew she didn't usually feel up to the drive. It was long and she didn't like the altitude and she had to drink water, which was her least favorite thing, just because she wanted to cook a proper dinner with us and Jenna and Traven. She also sent us up with strawberry rhubarb pie, which I credit fully my taste for rhubarb to that. I have so many fond memories of big family dinners and brunches with the whole clan, where she would let us kids pick the restaurant fully half the time. And one time, Marguerite told me this just recently, went out to get Italian dinner together. Marguerite was maybe 19. And she quietly told Marguerite that one of her favorite foods was specifically cold leftover pizza for breakfast. And how can you not laugh when you learn that? It's so at odds with her constant image of high propriety, but cold pizza for breakfast. She also showed her love to us through gentle mentoring, often in the realm of fashion, mostly in the realm of fashion. When my sister and I were very little and lacking any sense of style or any sense of common sense in the moments we did think we had style, she would help nudge us in more reasonable directions. I have vague recollections of standing in the guest bathroom as she helped put our hair up into messy buns, or buns with wispies, as she would say. So we were too young to look so severe with everything slicked back. And I remember much more clearly being around 8 or so and putting together an all pastel outfit with plaid pants and a striped shirt, only to enter the kitchen and be met with mild dismay. It was an embarrassing lesson to learn at the time, because I had been so proud of this look. I thought she would love it. But it's one I'm glad I learned early and gently. And I did have a shirt that worked just as well. So all was well in the end. She was also very generous with her wardrobe, letting Marguerite steal the clothes that Grandma left in Sharon's old bedroom every time we visited. In fact, it's one of Grandma's cardigans she has on now. Everything, of course, was perfectly tasteful. I remember being very apprehensive my junior year of college before our annual winter visit. I had just lopped off 2 feet of hair in favor of a somewhat long and shaggy pixie cut, and I was very worried that it was too modern. And to my eternal surprise and delight, Grandma loved it, absolutely loved it. She loved it slightly less when she spotted that I gelled it up into something resembling a mohawk to surprise my little sister with at the airport. But she didn't so much as murmur, and I washed it out very promptly afterwards, so all was well. And ever since COVID, as Marguerite's hair has gotten progressively more unusual from visit to visit, oh yes, this is pretty peak. And Grandma would still give her compliments with only a split second more of progressively taken back expressions. I'd usually focus on the health of the hair. You know, it might be a mullet, but so healthy, so healthy. You know, visits for Grandma didn't need to be, you know, special or planned or for any real reason. She was always just happy to have us there. During COVID, before the vaccines came out, Marguerite came for a visit, and Grandma sat on a stool outside in the garden so that she could talk to her on the other side of the fence. It was supposed to just be a short visit, and she was there sitting on the stool with her carer for over an hour, just talking about everything and nothing. 2 months ago, the same happened with me. I had come up to visit with my boyfriend, but we mistimed things slightly and arrived around the time of day she normally took her nap. And so, of course, I just went to the bedroom for a quick chat, not wanting to disturb her. And she said, "Nonsense," and made her way down to the kitchen, where we all sat around and had a lovely 2-hour chat that covered school and dogs and life and what she'd been watching on TV, and you know, everything and nothing all at once. And she was vibrant, and she was happy, and she was still very much herself. It was a visit I treasured then. It was time I treasured then, and I treasure it even more now. And this was classic of Grandma. I fondly recall the many afternoons and evenings we spent just enjoying each other's company, sitting in the living room with her, watching TV or reading or chatting, and she'd quietly just start taking a nap with the dogs on the floor while we continued doing whatever it was we were up to. And it was just so nice to spend time in the same general area as each other. That's all we really needed. And her love for her dogs, as we said, and her grandchildren was perhaps equally strong and sometimes lightly in conflict. We were told not to give the dogs extra snacks or table scraps, but she never scolded us for sneaking very sneakily, as 6-year-olds or 4-year-olds or 8-year-olds are sneaky indeed, the bits of brisket fat or trimmings to the dogs under the table at dinner. And occasionally she would go so far as to comment on how we must be messy eaters because the dogs always loved to sit under our chairs while we ate, but she never seemed to actually catch us in the act. And likewise, we never got told off when we invariably left something we shouldn't have within reach of the curious chew-happy pups. One such occasion, when I was young, resulted in my being handed a slightly crooked but lovingly resewn, bead-filled stuffed snake that was noticeably lighter than it had been on arrival. Her only comment was that Curie's stomach was a little upset and she'd be getting rice for dinner. I kept that snake well into my late teens. And as everyone said, in addition to all of this, Grandma and Grandpa had impeccable taste in art, and they curated their house beautifully. Even so, Grandma always went out of her way to make sure I knew how wonderful she thought any art I gave her was. And there was a lot of that. I was quite the budding artist when I was young. And to this day, on the side table in the dining room, there sits a slightly wonky globe-shaped glass bowl with an irregularly wrapped teal rim that I hand blew in middle school. There are dozens of valuable, collectible, matching pieces within arm's reach, some by master artisans. But that wonky hand-blown bowl is sitting front and center in pride of place. If I kept it for myself, I would have recycled it years ago. But here, she has it displayed with all the pride I felt when I presented it to her over a decade ago. And I don't think there's any higher honor or any museum I'd rather be shown in. And I know that she treasured it. And I know that she knows I treasured her. I really, really did. And I'm so glad I could be for her, there for her and with her as much as I was and as much as I have been. And I'm going to miss her terribly. But I'm so glad that I got as long as I did.
Dean?
I'm Dean Leiser, and I am a nephew of Dore. Although we never called her Aunt Dore in our family, we just called her Dore, and I don't know why. Her late husband, Chester Leiser, who was my late dad's younger brother. Dore will be missed by me and the rest of our family. She was shy about her accomplishments, but she never boasted or bragged. She graduated from Cal Berkeley at a time when it was still rare for a woman to succeed. She was honest and she was loyal. She also was very smart. Years ago, she and a group of other women started an investment club. She did quite well at it and contributed to the family income. She loved her dachshunds and was very proud of their dog show prowess. She also loved the garden, and it was evident that she was good at that too. She had an appreciation for objects of art and tastefully decorated her home. Finally, she loved her children and grandchildren, and I'm sure they loved her. I'm going to close with a quote my wife Anne received when an acquaintance of hers passed away. The origin is unknown. It goes like this: grieve not for me. My mind is at ease, my soul is at rest. Remember all how I was truly blessed. Continue traditions, no matter how small. Go on with your life. Don't worry about falls. I miss you all dearly, so keep up your chin until the day comes when we're together again.
Hi, I'm Traven, for those I don't know. And Dore was my sister Jenna and I's great aunt, but we always knew her as Aunt Dore. She was our mother's aunt. And I'll always remember her for her strength and quiet determination. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And the way she made me feel was looked after and supported and inspired. And that will always be with me, those feelings. Inspired particularly when she was picking a restaurant for us. No one could do it better than her. As you've heard, she knew the best spots. Her birthday was a day before mine, so I assumed I understood her because we Cancers we're very strong on the outside, but very soft on the inside. And I thought I saw that in her as well. She was really a champion of my sister and I's, and a hero in a time when we really needed someone to come in when our mother died. We were both fairly young, teenagers, and she stepped in and acted as our conservator and really helped navigate some financial challenges we had up in the canyon with our property. She really looked after us and really guided us through a really tough time that I'll always be grateful for. I know she had I think she had a soft spot for the canyon. She always stayed up to date with all the news up in the community. And, she was just always there to offer us very sage advice. And I found that she did it with a twinkle in her eye. She did have a lot to say, even if it wasn't loud. And she had a great sense of humor, and she always kept her humor, even if there were things she didn't agree with, which I really admired. I'm so grateful that we have such nice memories up in the canyon and for so many holidays. And I'm so grateful that we're so close to the rest of the family and to the cousins, and that we had that time up in the canyon. We had that wonderful Thanksgiving just in 2018. I'll always remember that. And then most importantly for me recently, she hadn't been feeling well the last couple years. And last summer before last, a year and a half ago, when I was just early diagnosed with breast cancer, she made a huge effort and she came up to the canyon to see us with the specific intention to just tell me that she knew that I would be okay and that I was going to get through it. And so there she was, continuing to set this wonderful example of support and strength and inspiration. So I'm really grateful for all of that.
Okay. My name is Jenna, and Traven is my sister. And I refer to her Aunt Dore as Aunt Dore also. So just to echo, sorry, I got emotional there. And she was right. My sister is okay. So yeah, I think of Aunt Dore. My mom passed away when I was 14. And I think of her as the mother bear that came in to protect us and stand up for us when we didn't have a lot of people doing that at that time. And she really fought for us and enabled it so that we were able to inherit the land up in the canyon. that was my mother's and my mother's father's before that. And now it's one of the most sacred, important things in my life is to be able to live up there and hike and really enjoy that property. And that property also enabled us to buy our first house, and my sister and I, and for me to go through college, and all these gifts that I've been given in a trajectory that might have been very different without her coming in to stand up for us. So I am forever grateful for that, to have that mother bear that came in and take care of us. And I remember I picked two really kind of radical liberal arts colleges that I wanted to go to. And one was in San Diego, and the other one was Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. And I think I'm glad I picked one even more radical than Evergreen, because then Aunt Dore said, well, I think Evergreen would be good because it has a campus and you can, meet other students and be on the campus. And, at the time I wasn't sure if she was right, but she was right. It was a really great experience. And I am glad I had that traditional college experience and met a lot of great people while I was there. And as many people have mentioned, the food, Aunt Dore and Uncle Chet were some of the first people to take us out to really nice meals. And, I remember at the age of 12, them letting us taste really nice bottles of wine and things that I thought, they started what I now know as being a foodie. They were our introduction to like showing us what really good food was and appreciating that. And so I'm very grateful for that, and that they would, on a 12-year-old let her drink really nice wine. And then I also wanted to mention a few years back, I got an artist residency here in Denver, where I did a lot of a big installation in tribute to Helen Neal, who lived in the canyon and Aunt Dore knew. And Aunt Dore, well, I show up at the opening and there's this big bouquet, this beautiful fancy bouquet of flowers. And I was so shocked, and I thought, who is this from? And I looked at the card. It's from Aunt Dore. And I just remembered on the drive down here, and I started bawling because it really touched me that she knew how important that was, and that how much she appreciated the arts, and just her honoring me in that moment. And I felt like she was really proud of me, and it was nice to have that when I didn't have it from parents. She kind of took over and took that role, and really let me know that she was proud and celebrating that, and it meant the world. And yeah, she was just always an example of strength and intelligence, and taught me a lot about managing money and doing your research on things, and what it meant to be a very smart, intelligent woman who could fend for herself. So I am forever grateful. I think so many of the gifts in my life are thanks to her, and I just want to send my love out to her. So thank you.
Many times Rabbi and I do funerals for people we don't know. And I thank you all because now I know Dore. I'm going to ask you to rise so that we can sing the memorial prayer, the El Maleh Rachamim, in which you'll hear her beautiful Hebrew name. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochen Bamiromi, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים ודיורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת דבורה בת יצחק ושרה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן, אוי בגן עדן, תהי מנוחתה אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסתר גנבך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום אל נשכבה ונאמר אמן.
O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Dore, Leiser, Devora, the daughter of Yitzchak, and Sarah, who has gone to her eternal home. Lord of mercy, we beseech you to remember all the worthy and righteous deeds she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she ever rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. I'm going to turn the program over. Just give your attention. I'm blanking on your name. I'm sorry. And you're Maggie, who's going to give you instructions as to how to make our way to the cemetery this morning.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. And thank you all so much for being here today. The service at the chapel has concluded, so we're now going to make our way to Mount Nebo Cemetery. This is not an escorted procession, so in those folders in the front, there's directions on how to get there. You can just go ahead and get in your cars and meet us there, because like I said, nothing official happening. Drive safely, and we will see you there at Mount Nebo. Thank you.